I often think about, like, we have these challenges, you have these frustrations, you have all this like arguments, right? Because you're not learning the lesson. Like, we went through this over and over again because we didn't learn the lesson. Like, it just kept coming up. Welcome to Ignite Your Passion podcast. My name is Villacis.
Hi, my name is Raul Villacis, and in this podcast, we're going to help you ignite your passion in your business, in your marriage, and in your life. So welcome to the Ignite Your Passion podcast. My name is Raul Villacis.
Yes, so happy to be here. My name is Vivian Villacis, and today we have a special guest, Chanel.
Chanel is in the house for the second episode of the Ignite Your Passion podcast.
Was she in the first one?
No, she was not.
She was around, but she wasn't with us. But today she's here, so.
Good. So I'm glad that you joined us. If you join us live, just make sure you leave a comment. Let us know where you're watching us from. We're doing this live, and if you're watching us from YouTube, in our channel or podcasts platforms, welcome to the show. This is a new season for the podcast. I'm excited for the holiday season. So today's topic is
the conflict that we get to be part of in this holiday season. I think, the conversations that I've had for a lot of the queens is the stress that we feel during the holiday season. And I know sometimes we place that extra stress ourselves, and I get that. But I think, when we start this holiday season, we were thinking of like, okay, what do we really want to talk about? And something that's always in our hearts and something that we always talk about is communication. And this is something like, this is one of my greatest teachers, and I'm still learning and I'm still struggling when it comes to communication. And I feel like maybe now so much when it comes to our, you and our relationship, but still, like, if you're having challenges, not with just your spouse, but it could be with your kids or your in-laws or friends or family, like wherever it is, like communication is something that is so important in any relationship. And the reason why we wanted to have this topic is because a lot of us face a lot of challenges when it comes to holidays.
So let me tell them a little bit about how when we got married, the biggest struggles that we had at the beginning of our marriage were the holidays. I think we almost got divorced every single holiday for the first 5 years. Like, I remember I was actually like considering, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. This is way too hard. We had a great time during the year, but holidays come in and it was World War III.
That's right.
Tell them why. Why is it that we used to argue in the holidays?
It was always something along the lines with the family dinners, the reunions, where do we go for the holidays? Do we go to your family's house or my family's house? We had to shift our schedules for dinners and all these things that we had. And I think it was just so much commitments that we had. At least I felt like we had so much commitments. It was just overwhelming.
It was just two different type of families.
Yes, it was
you grew up in
overwhelming.
a family that you were four or five?
We're five.
Five people, and that was your whole family.
That's right. And it was always like Christmas, a beautiful sit-down dinner, quiet. Yes.
Then you join my family. We're like 50. We were all 50 deep, and that's our like immediate family, brothers, cousins.
That's right.
Sisters, nephews. So when you join out my family on the holidays, we can't eat 50 people. Can't eat in a sit-down dinner. Like, we're eating in the living room, eating in the dining room, eating in the wherever we can. Like, so it's a different dynamic.
Completely
and that's
different.
part of what I loved about my family is I always grew up in a household where there was always welcoming. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you were not invited and you're at the house, now you're invited. You're a guest. And as opposed to in your mom's house with your family, it's like, no, if you don't have an invitation, you can't come in. Like, this is like very strict.
But it also, I think it goes a little deeper than that, right? Like, we start this fights and we start this miscommunication because there is this, like, I'm not your priority. You're not seeing what I'm fighting for. And at the beginning of our relationship, like, I was fighting for it. Like, I didn't care what I had to go through. Like, I was going to stand my ground, and I'm here to win this war.
And I remember the last fight that we had.
Oh, it was horrible.
I remember the last fight.
Horrible.
I don't know if you remember this one.
I totally remember.
we had the kids already. Was it New Year's? It was New Year's. And then I already told my parents that I was going to go for New Year's to the house. And
that you were not, or
I was
that you
not.
were?
I was
okay.
not. I said, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to be with Vivian. I think we had even Jay who used to work for us.
That's right.
He was at the house.
That was the last fight.
And we had a nice sit-down dinner.
We did.
It was a beautiful setting. We were sitting by the fire.
And continue, because that's also a big thing why the argument happens. There was alcohol involved.
Yes, I love my wine. I had already a bottle of wine.
A couple of bottles.
And then I got this bright idea.
A wonder from where?
Wanting to go see my family, right? And it was snowing outside. But Jay wasn't drinking, so I asked Jay to drive us. And
You thought he wasn't drinking.
And he was willing to drive us. He didn't drink that much, but he was willing to drive us.
That much.
And I remember you and I started fighting about, like, he felt like he was our third child in Christmas, watching his parents argue, and he used to work for us.
So then looking back at that fight.
Did we end up going?
Yes, we ended up going. You drove like a maniac. I literally felt like I was in like a Six Flags roller coaster as we're going through this streets with snow, trying to get to your mom's house. I don't know why we were rushing, because it was
we were
already
trying to make it to midnight. That's what it was. We're trying to make it to midnight. I didn't want to miss the midnight hug, the midnight kiss.
Oh my goodness. So, and again, if you look back and you kind of like see and dissect what really happened, it's like you said something to me and I took your word for it. And all of a sudden you decided to go back on your word, and it's not the man that you usually are. So then when you take that back, it's like, oh, how dare you? You already told me something. But it wasn't you. It was because of the alcohol that you had one too many drinks, and then you made that decision from an unconscious behavior. Immaturity.
Most of the stupid decisions that I've made has been involved alcohol.
Yes, but at that point, it's like you just feel so unseen, unloved, and unappreciated, which we talk about all the time. And I really I was just like so hurt, and I really wanted to make my point, and I was not giving in, and I fought tooth and nail until you heard me, and you didn't, because obviously you weren't in the space to hear me. Took the kids. I was fighting for my kids. You didn't hear me. I just kept thinking like the worst case scenarios as the ideal woman kept coming into my head, and you didn't care.
And then I remember you were the next day.
We didn't talk for 3 days.
We didn't talk. I said, this is not the way that we want to start the year.
We did not talk for 3 days. I want to be honest here. Like, this is where we were. This is how toxic our relationship could have gotten. Like, and there were times that they were there. I'm like, I do not want to talk to you. Like, I do not even want to be in the same room with you.
All because
the
holidays.
All because of the holidays
so
and the stress.
You could definitely relate to
stress.
The fights that couples have during the holidays.
The pressure.
And you're right. It's 100% lack of communication, lack of, because maybe part of me said yes when it was a no. So one of the things I do now is like, if it's a yes, it's a yes. If it's a no, it's a no. And I stick to it. Because at the end of the day, like a man has to be his word. Like just like I said, if I told you, okay, we're not gonna go. I already told. Nobody was expecting us, but all of a sudden you get that thought that, okay, I'm gonna do something.
Like, I'm the fear of missing out, the FOMO, right? Like the FOMO that you get from like not being there. So it's like you got to jump on the opportunity, and I'm gonna go. And again, you're not making a logical decision because you are intoxicated. Now, the holidays, I think for us, what it did is like, there was already that pressure that we knew was coming. And I know a lot of the couples right now already know that pressure, but then they try to either deny it, avoid it, or just put it away. They don't talk about it until you're actually in the thick and thin of the situation, right? And that's what happened to us. Like when we got to the holiday, to the same day when we were going to do something, then the pressure was even more alive because we hadn't talked about it. We didn't communicate our true emotions, and it got big. It got really big.
After 25 years being married, like we've learned a lot in the last 25 years. And one of our values now is just bring the harmony and the joy to our immediate family. Because if you and I are not on the same page, it doesn't matter who we want to impact, is not going to make the same effect. So what do we get if you and I are fighting, and yes, we go to wherever we have to go to, but then the energy is not there. So for me, how do I deal with conflict is I address it. If there's a conflict between us, we got to clean the space. There's something called hold the space. Hold the space. If you're going through something, I'm going to hold the space so you could actually see that I got you. Right. But clean the space means, listen, I fucked up. I did something I shouldn't have done. Let me clean the space so that we're not arguing over and over again. Because what happens with couples is that they continue to bring out the past. Well, you did this last year, remember? You did this last, 5 years ago. You did this last month. Like the moment that you clean the space, it's gone. Let's move forward as opposed to continue to bring back the baggage.
That's a beautiful love tip, because if you clean the space with something that happened, something that you said or something that you did, but it really has to feel like, okay, you're cleaning the space and it's no longer there. Because you're right, we continue to do that. I think another thing that, like we learned from our mistakes, and that's what it is, I think too, like one of the things that I often think about, like we have these challenges, you have these frustrations, you have all this like arguments, right? Because you're not learning the lesson. Like we went through this over and over again because we didn't learn the lesson. Like it just kept coming up.
Every single year was the same thing.
Right. It kept coming up until I know my mom said to me, she was like, well, why don't you just do what he wants to do and be happy? Like you got to be by his side. And part of me was like, no, I want to fight for you. And I want to like, be here with my family too. And there was truth to that because that was my truth. Because there's also this part, and we were talking about this, it's like sometimes in the relationships, you come to this place where you're not arguing for anything. You're not fighting for it. You're not igniting that passion that we talk about and like really like speak your truth. And that's also in a way bad, or maybe not useful at the moment, because you're lying to yourself. You're lying, you're pretending, you're ignoring your true feelings. So I really think you have to have like this gut check. Okay, what am I really fighting for? And what is it that I really want? And again, it goes back to communication of like, what do we want to feel like? What do we want to be right now in this relationship? And then from that place and like, okay, then we make the decision. So I think like I had to be honest with myself and tell you like, hey, listen, I also love my family. Like we need to spend time with them. Let's compromise here. Like, well, how can we work things out? We're two adults that we love each other tremendously. But when it comes to arguing, like we could kill each other with words. And once those words are out of your mouth, you cannot bring them back.
And the worst thing here is that you're ruining the experience for the people around you, especially in the holidays. Like one of the things that I look at is protecting my energy and making sure that I create a space that is not chaos, and I pick my fights so I could continue to bring that connection. Right. Because at the end of the day, like what arguing or conflicts do is just that the enemy that wants to whisper in your ear. Or like if you look at it, people get sick on the holidays because the immune system is down. Like they have stress in the holidays because they think they have to spend all this kind of money to make people feel they're loved. Why? Because they haven't taken care of their relationships, and now you have to buy people's affection. The reality is that the holidays are supposed to bring people together, not put us apart.
But a lot of us find ourselves in that situation, and that's why we want to bring light to this. Now, if you do, I wrote down a couple of things like how to have this healthy disagreements. Like if we are going to fight, if I'm going to fight for something, and you're already in the situation when you know like, hey, listen, there's parts of me that need to communicate this. How do you do that with a healthy communication? I wrote down not screaming, not calling each other's names, because I think that's the first thing that we do. Not expecting, this is a big one for me, not expecting the conversation to go the way that I want it to end. Because there's a lot of times where the conversation ended and it didn't go the way that I planned it in my head, and I didn't get mad about it. Because I'm like, I'm going into this conversation not expecting it to end the way that I want it to end.
I would say to that, don't get attached of the other person seeing that you're right. Do you want to be right or do you want to be loved? I talk about in my coaching is be the container, but don't be the garbage can, right? The container is like, okay, I see your point. I respect that you're offended, but I'm not going to be the punching bag. Because what happens is that a lot of women want to use their man as a punching bag. But if the man is not strong enough, he becomes a punching bag. But if the man has a strong emotional awareness, he becomes the container.
Yeah. The last one that I wrote was if you're having a healthy disagreement, you should have an emotional maturity to have those conversations. And I mean, I know that if you're in a relationship for a long term, sometimes we know exactly what buttons, what triggers to push. And I think that makes the conversation even that much harder. But if you have that emotional maturity, like how can we communicate as human beings that we actually love and respect each other? And that's the moments when you could say you love the person anytime, but you love that person when you really have to reach for that emotional maturity and have those conversations and have like this conversation with like love and respect.
And don't run away from them. You know, I know a lot of men who want to be pleasers, and I don't want to argue. I don't want to argue with you. Whatever you want, whatever you say, honey. If you have a partner that is always a pleaser, there's no polarity.
Right.
And then even if there's no fights, there's no passion. Like there has to be some kind of disagreement sometimes in order for you to grow and expand as a couple.
Yes. And then I also add to that something that I also, like as I was thinking about this, like just our own personal stuff, right? Like two things that come to mind. My grandmother passed away and she left us one of the most beautiful gifts. And it always comes up to me because there's so many things that sometimes I want to say to you, but I'm like, if I say it, I won't be able to take it back. And she would say just tweet, 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 like just keep your mouth shut, pretty much. And then Mel Robbins.
It's like if you have nothing good to say,
don't say nothing at all. And then Mel Robbins also talks about the 5-second rule. And pretty much she talks about like, make a decision, 5, 3, 2, 1, and then like, okay, you make that decision. But I think sometimes we're too quick to do or to say something, but take those like 5 seconds and think, what are you really going to say? And what are you really going to do right now? Because I think a lot of the times for us, when we were in that energy field, we wanted to fight and just get our point across. We're so reactive so quickly. And instead of like, I find myself now in this version of me, just pausing a lot more and taking a deep breath. Like your breath should be your first word. As you take a deep breath, like let that be your first word. Have those 5 seconds. Really think like, what's coming next out of my mouth? And how do I get this conversation, challenge, frustration, anxiety, whatever you're going through, to actually go to a better path? And how do I want this to end? Right? Because if not, you could be down that trail for a really long time. And at the end, you look back and you feel like, wow, I just fucked up all this. And now I have to go into this holiday party. And
then you have the guilt and shame and you bring that into the season, bring that to a new year. And it's like the same thing over and over again. It's like the never ending cycle.
And not to say, this is from a place that we've learned. This is 25 years in the making. Like this last couple of years, like we've actually enjoyed our family. Like, you know, and as I say that, I still have challenges as, you know, I live and I learn of communication.
You can't please everyone.
I can't.
That's the truth. It's impossible to please everyone.
But isn't that crazy? Like in our relationship, like right now we're in this place where like, okay, we get each other, the communication that we've had because we've had a lot of practice. And yet I still have challenges with other people that I love that I haven't gotten it together yet. And whatever happened. It's like I need to go and clean up and do the work. So as I say this, it's like we're constantly learning, we're constantly evolving, we're constantly cleaning up our own stuff. We're not here to tell you like, this is it, we've made it. No, we're far from it. Believe me, we're far from it. But I think in that learning to communicate and learning like, how do I do this with a better programming than what I did in the past?
And the one thing that you do great, at least for me, is that you give me the space for me to figure things out, and as opposed to nagging and telling me the things that I'm not doing. So by you giving me the space, I could actually, in my head, yes, I fucked up on that. I need to own my shit.
I try to make it funny. Sometimes I try to like, you know, I try to bring humor into it. And I think also like, I'm just honest. I think one of the biggest things for me as I tap into my feminine, like I'm just vulnerable.
And that is the best thing. Like the feminine energy allows, because now if you nag at me, it comes from a masculine energy of like, I want you to do this, that you know better than me.
Right.
And then a man is not going to react well on judgment, on criticism. But if you tap into your feminine energy and ask me, then I want to do things for you.
And that's the challenge for us as women. Like when we're in that energy of like, I want to fight and I want to make you feel how bad this feels. I want to make you feel how angry I am. Then you're on your masculine energy. The minute that you really sink in, and that's why I say like breath is so important for me, then I'm like, okay, this is going nowhere. How do I really tap into my feminine? It's through breath. It's like, what is the outcome here? Then I'm like, I have to be vulnerable because I really got to tell them like at the root cause, what is it that I'm feeling? I'm not enough. You're not loving me. You're not seeing me. You're not appreciating me. So why are we here together? Like, what are we doing here, Raul? Like, why are we going to a family event if you don't want to be with me? If you don't love me, if you don't see me, then you go with them. Or do you rather be with me? So I know it sounds a little bad, but it's also like that vulnerability part of like, I just need to be loved.
And expressing that.
I just need to be loved.
Knowing how to express it.
Yeah.
Knowing how
Sometimes
to ask.
we don't know.
And vulnerability. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where a man could appreciate the honesty and having honest conversations.
Yeah.
So, great. So I hope
place.
that this helps you.
Yes.
If you have conflicts in the holiday, maybe to diffuse some bombs. Don't get divorced in the holiday. Make sure that you think it through.
And as you're thinking about this, like you're arguing in the holidays because all these things, all these pressures that you have, like we talked about, right? Like the dinners and the gifting and the buying and the family affairs, the in-laws and all these things. It's like you also have the decision making, the choice. Like, what do I get to do this holiday? What do I really need to prioritize in my life? And there's a couple things that I may need to say no to, and that's perfectly okay, because I think sometimes we just overpack our schedule, and that's where the conflict comes in. Like, do the things that make you happy. And I know sometimes like we say that, but we don't do enough of that, because then it'd probably be a lot less conflict.
And at the end, as a man, as a leader, it's your job to bring that connection with your family. And your woman is going to follow as long as your intention is pure. As you may not be perfect, but at least you're creating progress.
That's right. That's right.
Happy holidays. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, guys.
Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Yes.
At the end, we know that the best is yet to come.
Say
Learn
bye.
it, live it, experience it.
Love life.
If you like this podcast, make sure you check out the previous episodes here,
And don't forget to subscribe.
because the best is yet to come.